But let's move into the final topic, and we are super excited to finally welcome in our patron Sam onto the line. It's been a little bit of an issue because apparently we were emailing the wrong email, but now we finally got it all figured out. Sam is on the line. He's a Chicago guy. He's a Bulls fan. He's a Bears fan. Super excited to have him on. Sam, how you doing?
Awesome, guys. Glad to be on.
Glad to have you. And you threw out a great topic, something that we really haven't talked about before, and it's definitely an issue in the NBA that needs to be talked about, and that's expansion/relocation. If they are going to expand, and should they expand, and if they do, what cities should they explore? So let's start off at least in the basic part about it. Right now, there's 30 NBA teams. Should they expand to 32, 34, 36 teams, Sam? Do you think they should expand the NBA?
I think minimally it should be like the NFL. We should go to full 32. Full 32.
Yeah, I think
that's just a magical number.
And what places do you think they should explore at least if they do add that 32? Because I agree with you at least with that.
Okay, number one, Seattle has to get a damn team back with that new damn arena being built.
Preach.
The Supersonics have to be revived. It's a criminality that they freaking went to Oklahoma and they haven't had a team of any sort since 2008. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's just too much history in that city being basketball town, period.
And they're such cool logos. Like, it's the coolest name. It's the coolest colors. Like, it's just an absolute crime, like you said, that there's not a team in Seattle.
I'd go back to the logo, though, like from the 90s with the actual spear with the basketball, not the circle with the S that they had when Durant left.
See, I grew up with the S, so I kind of like the S.
I thought it was kind of cheesy. Like, I like the old one.
Whoever wants it. Yeah. I think Sam is kind of in your guys' age range, so he might agree with the red and green. Which side are you on? At least if they do bring it back, should they bring back the gold and yellow or the red and green? Sam.
I think try to just give tribute to the entire legacy of the franchise. I mean, I just want a team back in that city. I mean, it's just like. It's such a major metropolitan area in the United States, and they don't have a freaking basketball team anymore. It's just not normal. Even after, it's been,
11 years?
10 years. Yeah, it's like, it just doesn't feel normal to me. It just doesn't.
Especially with the fandom that you see with the Seahawks. Like, that is a team that can support a full-fledged NBA team. I mean, they're clearly supporting the NFL team, and it probably helps that they're winning, but they've been there since the 70s. Mm-hmm. They can clearly support a large market team.
Even soccer. Their soccer team is thriving. Yeah. Absolutely thriving out there. So, that city is primed for this team to come back, and I look forward to when it does happen, because I think even Adam Silver was on record talking about how he would even prefer getting Seattle a team back in the NBA in the near future.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. Are they thinking about getting an NHL team, or is that's pretty in stone that they're getting one?
They
right?
are getting one.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's in stone. It's happening.
Yeah,
I think 2 more years, give or take.
I believe you're right, and I think it might start 2020. But yeah, Bettman announced that there will be a team in Seattle, okay. And like Sam said, they already have the arena. It's just like a typical NBA arena that's used for the NHL, just like the United Center, and it's used for the Blackhawks and Bulls. It's gonna be the same thing out there in Seattle. I don't think they've announced a team name yet or anything like that, but they are definitely close to. I think probably this year they'll announce the team name and probably some of the higher ups for that team and getting them ready for the next expansion draft in the NHL. So Sam, you already threw out one in Seattle. I don't think anyone has disagreements here. If they're going to expand, Seattle needs to be one of those teams, or at least one of those markets. What would be your next team up there? What's your number 2 team or number 2 city that the NBA should be explored to expanding to?
Well, my thing is we got to balance the conferences, so that's an automatic must. Automatically, we're going to be putting the revived Supersonics into West, of course.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, if I really had to pick between 2 viable potential new markets, I would pick either just Omaha, Nebraska, or Louisville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Put them into East.
I understand where you're coming from there, and I totally agree that Omaha. We already see what Oklahoma City's doing. They've been able to support a franchise, and they're always backing that team. And Louisville, I think the point that you'd probably make is it's a clear point. Kentucky is a basketball state. I mean that team supports Kentucky, the Wildcats. They support the Louisville Cardinals. That team could support, and they have the fandom behind it. The only thing that I would say here, and Dave, I want to know your thoughts.
Yeah.
I understand Sam's thinking of if they go to 32, which I am a fan of, I think they get rid of conferences. I don't think you keep the traditional 16 and 16 Eastern and Western Conference. I think you probably schedule it where it's easier and you have a similar schedule to where you play the teams that are more in your surrounding areas. But I think you get rid of that and you take the best 16 teams. Because right now we see this discrepancy between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. The Eastern Conference is the weak East, and the Western Conference has 14 teams that could probably make it out of the 15 into the playoffs this year. They're all going to be competitive. They're all at each other's necks. Give the ability for these teams, the best teams, to make the playoffs. That's what it should be. Who cares about this Western-Eastern Conference bias? And I think although Louisville and Omaha are great suggestions, I do think those teams are probably be the places in the East and maybe St. Louis, if they did go out east and added one team in there, if they're adding to Seattle. I think the clear and obvious place needs to be Vegas. It needs to be Seattle and Vegas if you are adding two teams there. Because Vegas, we see they're getting the Raiders. They already are supporting the Knights at a basketball team. Basketball out west is huge.
So I agree with you with the Vegas thing. They're getting the Raiders. They have the Knights. Get them a basketball team. But, some other things. Number one, I feel like we have to have two conferences.
Why?
I don't disagree with the best 18 or the best 16 get in, but I feel like because every other sport has two conferences. We don't have one sport where it's like, hey, here's a free-for-all. And I know what you're saying. Well, why can't the NBA be the first one? I don't think the NBA will ever get away from two conferences. I feel like it could be more of like a, it's exactly what it is right now. So, I mean, what's going through my head is nothing new. I just don't think we're going to get away from it.
Here's the thing: is the NBA is supposed to be the forward-thinking, the forward-thinking league, right? The NFL is killing its players with the way the game's played. The MLB is just dying because the people that were watching it are just dying off in general. I love the MLB at my age, but people in my age range don't, and it's a dying league.
Instant gratification.
And we look at the NHL. The NHL has always been playing second fiddle to all these leagues. The NBA can be the first to revolutionize it. Take the best 16 teams. And if you were doing that, the only reason why you have 8 and 8 right now is for playoff reasons. So get rid of it. There's no need to. There's no major rivalries in the NBA. Which ones stick out?
Yeah, rivalries change over time. I mean, that's the thing. Well, Celtics holds up over time. That's the only one, and it's got down years even in there.
But I mean,
even then, is it because of the Western and Eastern Conference? No.
It's because of the talent. It's because of the talent. It's the personalities. It's everything about the team itself. It's not so much about the once a year whatever matchups.
It's also the game's changed. Like back in the day, players weren't as buddy as they are now.
Yeah, that's 100% leans into.
They also didn't have free agency back then.
Yeah, but I mean, until like back then it wasn't like X player on the Bulls was tweeting X player on the Pacers. It was like, no, I fucking hate that guy. Like that kind of like that.
You could also throw clotheslines.
Get into those.
Yeah, Pistons, Bulls, ring a bell. That was some ugly crap.
Without a doubt,
those bad boy Pistons.
And that was one too. But I think recently rivalries have just kind of gone away. So I don't know if you're on my side, Sam, if you would be on the side of getting rid of Western and Eastern Conference. But I think if you don't, adding a team in the East would definitely make sense. But where would you be on that stance if they do expand to 32?
I would sort of do more of a compromise. I'm somewhat too old school. I just like having two conferences overall because I just think it has too much tradition given how long the league's been around. My thing is maybe if we do eventually get to 32-plus teams, maybe it's time for like a full divisional change-up and realignment of X amount of teams based more upon actual locality, which actually could solve a lot of the logistical travel issues that the players have been complaining for probably the past couple of years especially. And as we've seen, they pushed back the start date by another week to give even more days off and reduce the back-to-backs.
No, I think Minnesota's the clear culprit for this. I know they year in, year out, it's usually them in Portland who have the most miles traveled throughout the NBA season. So if you have the opportunity to shift a team like the Timberwolves to the East, that definitely would help out the travel schedule. And Sean, leading into yours, I think conferences are literally just around at this point. You know, you have the East and the West because of that. It's travel. Like, I don't think there's anything that in the rules that, you know, we could really divide up fairly and just be like, well, you know, you're East and you're West still, but like if you take away the names, those are still the teams you're going to play because of travel reasons. Like, you can't have these guys flying across the country like every other day because of the schedule. And I know as we talk, you know, future changes for the NBA, we've talked about that rumor of a shorter season. I think we're talking about like a 60-game season or something along those lines.
Yeah.
You know, if we keep trending towards that, then yes, there are extra travel days, and that's not as big of a problem. But still, it's something demanding out of players to get on a plane, go deal with the airports, all that garbage. So like, I could see a team like Minnesota or even Memphis, heck, like
New Orleans.
Teams that are that far east over for travel reasons shouldn't be in the Western Conference. If you're able to add 2 teams over there between Seattle and Vegas, like that could be a great compromise in that grouping.
For me, the only way I fix that is something that's impossible, and that's having an odd number of teams, which I absolutely hate. Because to fix that, how I would fix it is, all right, put a team in Seattle, put a team in Las Vegas, that's 2 in the West, so 2 of those can move to the East.
Yep.
And then like putting a team in like Omaha, Nebraska, that's like right smack dab in the middle, that can work. It's got that basketball history, but they're not going to complain as much as like a Minnesota that's a little bit more northeast compared to Omaha that's in the middle. But then you're at an odd number of teams, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants an odd number.
And let me on why Omaha, Nebraska. Is it just geological, or is there something behind that? I mean, because I'll be honest, like top of my head, I'm trying to pull off anything,
it's like Oklahoma
City.
It's like Oklahoma City for the Midwest, where it could be they've got Nebraska, and those fans are crazy for their Nebraska Cornhuskers, to where if you put a team in Omaha, I think it would be exactly like Oklahoma City of the Midwest.
Be a
just
great
a little
small
bit
city
north.
vibe, and just the fans super into it.
And if you come in, you do it right, they'll get around them and support them just as well as Oklahoma or OKC supports their team.
The biggest thing, too, is Kansas doesn't have, outside of Kansas City, they don't have a large majority city outside of that one. It is close to Kansas, which is the birthplace of basketball. Mm-hmm. So it's in that range of being in that area where the sport was founded.
Hell, they put it in KC, but that's a little bit too far. East then compared to Omaha.
Yeah, and they do have obviously the fandom too with the Chiefs and the Royals. Sam, what I do want to ask, and I think that we probably are all at least there with let's move it to 32. I don't think anyone's have any issues there, but do you see any issues if they do expand it to 32? Are there any downsides to expanding it out to 32, or do you think that one team should probably be moved just to Seattle to kind of hit that note, or do you think 32 is a kind of a necessity?
I think 32 is ultimately just a magical number for all 4 leagues, frankly, because I would actually like to see the NBA sort of make a concerted effort with, like, even Major League Baseball, since they're the only other league being at 30 apiece. Like, let's, like, try to coordinate our efforts here and try to, like, expand our business interests collectively as both professional sports leagues. And I think if they actually pick the right cities, like, it could actually be a huge economic boom over time for the cities in general. Because, the Raiders are going to Vegas. I mean, a lot of people are going to be making weekend trips to Vegas to go see a Raiders game and go gamble the night before. I mean,
it sounds intriguing to me.
I mean, expansion's the only way you can go up as far as, I think, just trying to further expand rights, because I mean the one thing you gotta really respect about the NBA's business savvy is I think in China they barely were able to broadcast less than 5 games in a given month back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have basically digital access to every single moment you can with the broadcast rights, which I think they just renewed with that Chinese company, which is responsible over there.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know how much that broadcast right agreement is for the next 5 years alone?
I think it's over $1 billion, right, or something like that. It's something insane.
It's like $800 million. I'm like, seriously.
Well, then with that, I mean, there was talks in Mexico City. Do you think they should go then more, at least outside of U.S. borders to try to make it more of an international game?
Or even a second Canadian team again.
Yeah, or a second Canadian team. What do you think about that, going outside of the 50 states?
I don't know. I mean, if they can somehow get up in Canada again, that'd be pretty fantastic. I don't know if they'd want to double dip in Vancouver again because that didn't exactly work out well, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the one place that you had to have to think, obviously, with teams that have NBA or NHL franchises, but also with rabid fan bases. And the two that stick out would be Montreal and then Vancouver. I think the one reason why they'd go Vancouver over Montreal is just because of the proximity between Toronto and Montreal, just so you don't have those fans overlapping and possibly, the fans that have been there since, 97 or whatever for the Raptors, they will actually move, where Vancouver, that whole western part of Canada, can probably adopt that team. I would find it a little bit difficult to go back into Canada because I think they've, after that championship, Toronto just kind of owns that whole province and that whole country when it comes to basketball. I think that is the team there, and I think we have seen them struggle at least with attendance, and now that they finally have gotten good, that we've seen them really come out in large masses. I would think Mexico City would be interesting. I just don't know if what the venture would be like for your first team, MLB, NHL, or NHL, NFL-wise, to finally add a team into a country, because that would be the first time any of those big four did that. I don't know if Mexico City would be one of those teams. With the Louisville idea, what do you think the idea should be building that franchise? Or if you want to go to your other suggestion of Omaha, how do you think they should build that team up?
Well, I think it's like this fine. It's like just do it as a grassroots thing. I mean, I think there's got to be some, multi-millionaire guy being in America's heartland who's just like begging to, get like a real freaking professional team for a state after so many decades. Considering.
Yeah, I think with Louisville, it's definitely gonna be an idea to kind of, and Ricky, you probably know more about this, it'd probably be difficult just to get in there with the college basketball fans that are stuck around there.
I would avoid Louisville, and it's only because, it's the state of Kentucky is Wildcat Nation, Cardinal Nation, and I would just avoid it. This is what's been going through my head, and I'm going to throw it out to you guys. It could be a little long in the tooth, but kind of stay with me. The one thing, although I don't watch hockey as much as I probably should, the one thing I like about them is how they do their playoffs. I've loved them because I'm a divisional guy. I've always liked divisions, and how they do it, where they have their 4, 2 in each conference. Those teams in that, like for the Atlantic, they're all fairly close. You don't have to worry too much about travel, and you've got 3 from each, and then 2 wild card teams that could get in. And they have an odd number of teams, 31. So why couldn't the NBA, hey, we're going to expand. We're going to go to 33 teams. That way teams like Minnesota, Memphis, and New Orleans could shift over into the East. And let's do that, where we'll have kind of like 4 pods, and that's how we'll do it. And then no one's going to complain about travel. The only thing you'll complain about is, hey, you got to be the best out of your pod to get into the playoffs.
To counteract that, they're adding a 32 team. So no, they are. And the playoffs going to stay the same.
They are, but it's like you could make it work with 33. You could make it work then from what I was I don't want that. Like, you could make it work is what I'm saying.
Well, Sam, since you were kind of keen on the idea of making every, MLB, NFL, NHL, NBA all having 32 teams, what would you think of the NBA going then to 33?
I don't know. I would say 32 is probably better because I think if you go odd, it's just going to create more cons than pros in the long term and in unforeseeable ways we can't even imagine right now, I bet.
Yeah, and I think it'd be weird, too, to have, and give me your thoughts on this, Sam, it would be weird to have 17 lottery teams rather than just a nice even 16. Mm-hmm. And right now they have 14, which, at least makes sense. Like, I think having 17 would just be, I'm probably just an OCD person, but I like things to be even. I like things to be, the same. I like to see like the 16 worst teams and the 16 best teams. This is the dividing line. This is what separated the middle of the pack here. This is why one team made it and another team didn't, where, that whole imbalance, at least having 33 teams, could throw it off, where you do have 16 teams. These are the 16 best teams. These are the 16 worst teams. That's why I'm in favor of the conferences. I think, going to 33 could kind of throw that off.
Which, to just throw devil's advocate in there, the NHL does have a lottery of its own, and they do have, I know it's less than 16, but it's 15, and they make it work.
Yeah, but then they're going to go to 32. Like, their whole idea was to add a second team. So, it's just right now with rolling out Vegas and then rolling out Seattle.
Even is better,
Seattle
but, like,
the arena.
You could make an odd number work. I'm talking myself into it could work instead of, like, no, even's the only way.
Yeah,
I've got a final question for you guys then. Is there enough talent to have 2 additional teams in the league? With the way superstars are grouping up, are we going to have these smaller markets be able to hold, high attendance numbers without being able to pull in big names? Because that's something where in earlier years of the expansion, we got lucky with the Miami Heat striking gold. Like, that team, when they were made in the late 90s, was like, boop, we got it, we have talent, and there it goes. And I just wonder, Sam, do you think we have enough people or enough big name stars to really draw in for expansion teams?
Well, I mean, that's just the other thing. I mean, there's just so many avenues you could find potential stars. You know what I mean? I mean, look, Chris Middleton. The dude was a major player in the G League for, like, how many goddamn years before he, like, got his big fat contract this offseason with Milwaukee? Mm-hmm. Because the thing is, I think, the other thing is, it's like for example, like Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, he was like nothing substantial in the Pistons. We traded him for that Cameron Bairstow for the Bulls.
Yeah.
Had him for, we should have kept him for the love of God, but we waived him like twice, of course. But, he ends up going to Brooklyn. Like, the dude actually lights it up. He's actually a pretty damn good role player, and he can even be a starter in emergency cases, Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's just the thing. I mean, the draft only goes, 60 kids can be drafted. It's like, how many of those undrafted kids, if you put them in the right situation, the right system, the right coaching, could really take off and be that, next to Marcus Cousins, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James? You just never know. I mean, it's all about the situation and the opportunities you get ultimately.
Sam, I absolutely agree with you on that, and that's the thing is, and I think you can see my point when I go, you look at what the MLB has done, and the MLB had those discrepancies of teams not being able to attract big names because they didn't have the salary cap, and without the salary cap, teams that were in bigger markets were able to spend more, and they were able to get these bigger market names. So teams had to think outside of the box. You look at the Tampa Bay Rays; they had to think outside of the box, and now that guy's in LA because LA's like, well, that's the way you win. You have to find the best players, and that was the same thing out in Oakland where we saw Moneyball. It's not all about having the best talent. It's not all about having the brand names. It's about thinking outside the box. And, obviously, I don't know if you guys know this, but I really like Denver. And I think Denver's really a really great team. And, yes, they do have Nikola Jokic, but they've found, 15 guys worth.
And what was Jokic's draft pick?
46.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you were able to find guys in the draft, and even then, they were able to fill out a roster that's 12 deep, 13 deep. So I think that you can find those guys, and it's not really about the star talent like Sam was saying. I think you hit the nail absolutely on the head. It's more about the system. It's more about the coaching. It's more about who is running and calling the shots. If you have Gar Forman out in Omaha, then that franchise might fold. But if you have a Daryl Morey or some of these guys that are these smart thinking, analytical driven minds, you can have an Omaha team succeed right away. Sam Presti, one of the best GMs in the league, made Oklahoma City work. If you have the right guys in the right places, you can make it work. Sam, you hit the nail on the head there.
Well, it comes down to scouting. That's the main thing. The scouting and talent evaluation is where you really find those guys. I mean, look at Giannis. I mean, it was like he was selling frickin' sunglasses on the streets of Greece. And some guy sees videos on YouTube doing pickup basketball. It's like, this guy looks like a real freak. We should probably try to get him into the state. MVP now.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
And no one knew him. You're absolutely right. It was all about scouting.
It is kind of curious how little NBA teams scout European basketball players. You see the top 1 or 2, 3 filter in every year, but beyond that, I feel like it's still an area where you just see uber talented guys continue to play over there for years and years, and they miss their NBA prime because teams aren't looking, or there's just not an interest maybe.
Well, and you're absolutely right, and Ricky, jump in right after this. Mm-hmm. Who's the only player to go number 1 that's an international player?
Isn't it
Andrea Bargnani?
Yeah.
Oh,
it wasn't Bogut.
Well, no, Bogut was Utah.
Yeah.
The one I totally forgot about Bargnani. Clearly, that didn't work out. I was thinking Yao Ming. And the only reason why Yao Ming did was because he was 7 feet tall. It was hard to miss him, right? And he played well in the Olympics. And he played well in the in the World Basketball Classic, where he made you stick out. And even guys like that, Dirk, made them stick out in like those World Basketball Challenges or those U.S. versus Nike games or the U.S. versus German games. He stuck out, but even then, there was just an international bias that guy wasn't good enough. Hello, Luka Doncic, number 3 overall. Why did that kid not go number 1?
Yeah,
that still exists. So I think, Sam, you're right. I mean, scouting will open up those teams in those markets because you can find guys like Luka Doncic or a Dirk Nowitzki if you scout right. Ricky, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, if let's say by adding 2 teams, 3 teams, you're adding more roster spots. So maybe someone goes overseas. Also, it's the difference of Draymond Green was a second rounder. What if one of these new guys was like, hey, I want to draft him? Or the guy that goes 31, 32. They're now a first-round pick, and they get that kind of that protection of like, hey, we get the first round, not just money, but the contract.
It's a guarantee.
The club options to, hey, I can keep him under, and that's the whole thing where the league is going to and has gone to, we want you to keep these guys. We don't want them to leave your team.
Unfortunately, the players are going the opposite
direction.
The
players are like, no, screw you. I want to go where I want to go. And that's just
it's an interesting dynamic.
The difference of it, where I don't think adding 2 teams would hurt in that sense if we went to 32. Players are going to go where they want to go regardless. It would just basically, for me, to make it more of a competitive league, or to lighten up, like if you want to move Memphis to the east, if you want to move Minnesota to the east, to give those travel-constrained teams an easier load.
Dave, give your final thoughts.
I think at the end of the day, basketball is a growing sport. It's rising in popularity, it's rising in fame, and it's become a global sport more than the NFL could ever hope for. And as long as it keeps growing in that direction globally, I heard there was a rumor about 5-on-5 basketball potentially not making the Olympics, in the next 2 rounds of it. So we'll see where that goes. But I think as long as it keeps growing globally, there's no reason to not expand, because you're just getting kids playing basketball from a younger age. You're getting more of a structure built up for them to come up through the ranks. Canadian basketball has been huge in the last 5 years. If you look at the talent that's come out in the NBA draft, it's incredible. And I think European basketball is still untapped for the most part. So you start there. India, we're starting to see a couple guys. We're starting to see Japanese players. We're starting to see Asia as a whole. So I think that there are so many guys that aren't even people aren't even aware of, who are extremely talented. If we can open up those teams, we can open up those opportunities for them.
And Sam, first time on the podcast, so this is gonna be your first time being asked, but definitely not your last time. We can't wait to have you back on. But we always ask final thoughts. I'm so glad you brought this topic up to us, and you have me excited about Peja Stojakovic and Drazen Petrovic and Vlade Divac and Tony Kukoc, all those guys that probably wouldn't have been seen if it wasn't for scouting. And if they do tap those international markets, relocation expansion could absolutely work. But end us on a high note for this topic. You killed it with the topic idea. What are your final thoughts on expansion and relocation?
I think it's just an inevitable conclusion with Adam Silver. I mean, he said it's like a matter of when versus like being the. It could be like next year, even it could be like 10 years down, but it's going to be happening like within probably the next 25 years. Mm-hmm. We will be at the 32 teams.
Yeah,
and for all we know, as far as when that occurs, the next NBA superstar could be found in freaking Madagascar.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely great job, Sam. And you're right. We don't know where the next guy's going to come from. Hakeem Olajuwon pretty much untapped. Joel Embiid as well. Found, and then we have Yao Ming. You have all these guys like Dirk as well. Some of these guys just
Rui,
coming out,
up and coming.
Rui as well. Guys that can definitely blaze some trails are out there. Hell, we can even throw out Matthew Dellavedova for Australia if we want to. Sam, thank you so much for being a patron, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. If you want to be like Sam, you can't be, but you can be a patron like Sam and join us on patreon.com/mostvaluepodcast. You can either be on the bronze tier and join the Discord. You can chat with Sam. He is super active in the Discord. You could be at the silver tier where you can throw out topic ideas to us, or you could be on the gold tier, just like Sam is. And you can call into a podcast and throw out your great ideas, like relocation or expansion, but you can't throw out that one because Sam just used it. But again, Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
I mean, I post so much crap, basically. I mean, I basically break every other story now.
You do.
You're our internal Woj.
Yeah, he is our Discord Woj. It's a great job by him. Always putting out great articles on our mindset. So, Sam, thank you so much, and thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you have any thoughts about expansion and relocation, let us know down in the comments below. Big thank you to John as well, who joined us. Big thank you to Sam, who's currently with us. For Dave Oster, for Ricky Widmer, I'm Sean Anderson. We'll see you next time.